he who would love life and see good days, let him refrain his tongue from evil and his lips that they speak no deceit. As one travels along the path of life, there are some words and phrases, songs and poems that have a profound echo in the enclaves of the soul. We have just heard one here because this would be one of the opening remarks of St. Benedict, and being exposed to its wisdom in early days changes one's life on a profound level. For he goes on to indicate the importance of peacefulness. Peacefulness. What makes for peacefulness? We have precisely indications in the Gospel itself. Here, unpeace is answering back. Answering on the same tone, playing the game that one is invited to play. It can become quite a crescendo, can it not? It can become quite a performance in which evil skill is involved. I would like, my friends, to dwell on this element of peace on two levels, and it concerns each soul here, for fundamentally our structure is the same. Psychologically, we are built in the same way, and what hurts me hurts you. What helps me helps you. And so, from generation to generation, we pick up the hints of those who have travelled before us. St. Benedict had been there and he knew. Where had he been? He had been, first of all, for 3 years in a cave. Now, can you imagine what that meant? He was not known there. It was a hiding place. One monk knew where he was, Romanus, and he would lower his daily bread, a little loaf, in a basket on a cord, and at the end of the cord was a bell. And it's said that that's the origin of the custom of bells in our monasteries. He was taught, therefore, by whom? Well, it was Easter morning one day, and it was given to a monk in another place, somewhere in a hidden grotto, to know that there was a monk starving to death. And so he went and found this hidden monk, who was starving because, according to the story transmitted by Gregory the Great, the bell at the end of the cord had been broken by old Nick. And so he had no food. But the puzzling thing is this: he did not know when he was found that it was Easter morning. So do you see how directly the formation came from God? There was no human contact for those 3 years. Now, all that is done for the Lord has to depart from that level of depth. If it does not, it is our own thing. It is noise, channeled perhaps, but noise nonetheless. If we are not people of depth and therefore of peace, we are busybodies. Now, I want to dwell for a few minutes on your soul. What right now is taking away its peace? What is contaminating it? We, if we're not careful, are very far removed from the experience of that emptiness and silence which Benedict knew. But we need not be totally either, and that's what I want to remind you. Part of the problem is ours. Now, even in a holy life, we can be fiddling with things. We can be sucked into things. We can be turning knobs which suck us in to invisible and virtual spheres. And with it goes a part of our soul, so interested with it that it forgets the reality of what? The unseen. We cannot feel anymore the delicate touches if we are used to high-powered impulses. Even children are at an early age in danger of being contaminated. Compare a child who is perpetually fiddling with modern, high-powered games with a child who is not in contact with that artificiality, and there is a profound difference. And we adults, we don't realize that we're big children if we're not mature enough to turn off or not even turn on certain knobs. Now, in that period of 3 years, he learnt what was filtered through in the rule. And a big chunk of that rule talks about one particular element: the protection of that peace on both levels by one specific issue: silence. Now, don't think it doesn't apply to you either. It does, my friends. Sometimes one navigates through life and one is exposed to people who are talking to you, but as soon as you start to form an answer, they have gone on to the next point. They do not want to hear the next answer. They are perpetually emitting noise. They are people of noise. Now, do you see how disfavoring they are to their interior life? It can be our case as well. Examine the quality of your conversation. Who is talking? The other is that element then of not, while we are on this planet Earth, draining all that precious energy to what is outside our soul. Because if we do, my friends, we become like what we are being drained by. We are acted upon progressively by osmosis and even erosion. We resemble what we love. One day, when still in formation in Italy at the time, we were taken by the good prior, two of us in formation, to Siena. And we visited places sanctified by St. Catherine. And there we recollected ourselves before a little niche. It was a corner of the ancient medieval hospital where one could just about curl up and go to sleep. And that's what the little maid would do. On this hard bed of a stone, she would, between bits of watching the dying, curl up and go to sleep. A little bit further in the hospital, we bumped into somebody, perhaps who was around at the time of St. Catherine. He was still there in the form of what? A perfectly preserved skull. But this skull, dumb and empty though it was extremely eloquent, because it had written underneath it something which hit me between the eyes to the extent that as soon as I was alone, actually in a nearby cafe, I pulled out what I could find, a bit of tissue paper, a paper napkin, and wrote back to him this skull. Because this skull had a caption in Old Italian, which in English would come through as this: what you are, I was. What I am, you will be. And I thought, and I thought, and I thought, and I looked, and I looked, and I looked into the empty jaws of this past human being who somewhere still was, wondering which way the inhabitant of that had gone, all by the use of it, because the brain sent the messages which merited heaven or hell, and commanded, for instance, those jaws looking at me to say good things or bad things, swear words or curses, blessings or whatever it might be, which merit forever where he was and where he will be by what he gained with the use of that bit of earth, which was his skull. So I finish, my friends, because if one goes through life with that use of time spent on what is not important, what actually damages our soul, we will look back one day when we are no longer in our skull and we will say, if only I had known the preciousness of time. I just finish with a reference which hit me also earlier on in France. This is a hidden saint, now beatified, Miriam, Mary of Jesus crucified, from the land of our own Saviour. A saint who could not read or write, but was a rocket of ecstasy, and off she would go. And also she had all the gifts, like the stigmata. She died at 32, but not before. Through her, the Lord had wanted certain things. Carmelite monasteries in the Holy Land, one of which, Bethlehem itself, he himself was the architect of, through this person. And, do you know what? When nuns would die, she knew where they went and why. One day, a prioress died. They thought she'd go straight to heaven. Not a bit of it. She was in dire trouble. Why? Because she had appropriated money as though it were her own, not that of the community. Another time, a hidden nun died and they thought, well, she'll probably get there eventually. Not a bit of it. She'd hardly seen a second of purgatory. She went whizzing. Why? Because her skull had merited a perpetual glory without hardly any purgatory, for one simple reason, which I leave with you and propose to you, my friends. For all her religious life, not once did she lack in charity.
Come tu sei, fui ancor io. Come io sono, sarai ancor tu. As you are, so was I. As I am, so will you be. Words beneath the skull at the old hospital in Siena. O part of man, whole of humanity, that smiles and waits a little while for us that look not where we go. Eternity, in but a moment's rest. A globule thus of matter, chattering not where sound can hear. All of a gaping hole that whole books writes, and reads again where chapters lived are near, forever, evermore, neath truth's great lights. O time, in but a fraction, breaking all that ever came this way. Time standing long upon a skull long emptied. Yawn the call of all that for a moment here belong. Grin placidly, there where the din is gone, from this wide jaw that aeons belched all one.